In the brutal saga of Viking conquest and ambition, few deaths are as darkly poetic or as bizarre as that of Sigurd the Mighty, a formidable Norse warlord of the 9th century. Sigurd carved his legacy in blood and steel, leading fierce campaigns across the windswept Orkney Islands. But the Viking gods, ever tricksters in the tales of the North, had a cruel irony in store. After defeating his enemy in a most treacherous way, he chopped off the head of his vanquished foe and rode with it as a morbid trophy, unaware that the severed skull, its teeth still clenched in death, would soon deliver a fatal wound and seal his place in history with a curse rather than a crown. What happened next would not only end his rise, but etch his name into history for reasons no warrior would ever end. This is Viking History with Magnus. Please subscribe and put on all notifications so you don't miss my next video about the Vikings. Sigurd Eysteinsson, nicknamed the Mighty, was the second Earl of Orkney, ruling in the late 9th century. He was the son of Eystein Glumra, a Norse chieftain from Norway who was part of the powerful More dynasty, closely linked to Harald Fairhair, the first king of Norway. When King Harald began consolidating Norway, he rewarded loyal followers by giving them lands to govern in the western seas. The Orkney and Shetland Islands, which had been used by Norsemen as a base for raiding Scotland and Ireland, were placed under Norse rule. Harald reportedly gave the islands to Ragnvald Eysteinsson, Sigurd's uncle, who passed them on to Sigurd. Sigurd the Mighty was no ordinary Norse chieftain. His ambition stretched far beyond the sea-bound strongholds of Orkney and Shetland. Driven by a desire for greater power and glory, he launched a bold campaign of expansion onto the Scottish mainland, a land of rugged coasts, fierce resistance, and untamed opportunity. Sigurd turned his attention to the territories of Caithness, Sutherland, and possibly even Ross, building forts to secure his gains and stamping out resistance with decisive authority. Sigurd's iron hand laid the groundwork for what would become centuries of Viking dominance in parts of the region. But for all his military success, it was not Sigurd's victories that would echo through history. It was his betrayal and the grim irony of how it all ended. According to the Orkney saga, Sigurd's most infamous episode unfolded when he clashed with a local Scottish chieftain named Maelbrigg the Bucktoothed. To settle their territorial dispute, Maelbrigg proposed a traditional solution: a duel, or holmgang in Old Norse. Check out my video for more on that. Not just a personal fight between two men, but a confrontation of honor. Each leader would bring 40 warriors, and the matter would be settled on neutral ground. Sigurd accepted, but in his devious mind, honor had no place in war. When the day of the battle came, Sigurd arrived not with 40 men, but with 80, cunningly mounted two to a horse to avoid suspicion. The betrayal was swift and devastating. The Scots were badly outnumbered and overwhelmed. Maelbrigg and all of his men were slaughtered on the field. Victory was absolute, but Sigurd's deceitful triumph would be short-lived, and the man he had just killed would take an unexpected revenge, but it would also be the beginning of a legend. Victorious over the chieftain Maelbrigg, Sigurd the Mighty sought to display his triumph in a chilling way. He chopped off Maelbrigg's head, and to show off his triumph, he had Maelbrigg's severed head fastened to the pommel of his saddle, letting it dangle as a brutal trophy, swaying with every step of his horse. It was a gesture both symbolic and savage, a declaration of dominance for all to see. But the Viking gods, ever watchful, has a way of humbling even the greatest of men. As Sigurd rode across the windswept terrain back toward his stronghold, the dead man's head knocked repeatedly against his leg. Maelbrigg, known in life for his fierce countenance and large, jutting teeth, hence his moniker Bucktoothed, seemed to take one final bite from beyond the grave. One of those prominent teeth grazed Sigurd's calf, cutting through the skin with a small scratch. In the days that followed, the cut began to fester. Infection took hold and fever gripped the mighty Earl, and his strength, once enough to break armies, withered beneath the weight of rot and pain. No sword struck him down. No rival claimed vengeance. Instead, Death came creeping, silent and slow, carried in the mouth of a dead enemy. And so ended Sigurd the Mighty, not in the blaze of battle, but by the scratch of a dead man's tooth. A death so bizarre, so laced with dark irony, it passed instantly into legend, and Sigurd became something else entirely, a cautionary tale. Some historians don't remember him as Sigurd the Mighty at all, but as perhaps the most foolish Viking to ever set sail. Remember to subscribe.